Welcome to the In the Middle podcast, a podcast where we talk about every avenue of life, because life really takes place in the middle, not the beginning, not the end. How do we navigate the middle?
Hey, welcome back In the Middle. I'm Zorn, and this is Dez.
Yes.
We are on episode 8 with another guest.
I think it's 9.
Oh, it's 9. I'm so sorry. 9.
Yeah.
We're on episode 9. Look at me. With another guest, and I'm really excited about this episode. We're going to talk overseas a little bit. We're going to talk out of the country somewhere.
We're going to talk. Our guest today has got a lot of, I would say, variety.
Okay.
Let's
dive in. Who is our guest, Des?
Okay, this is Corrie Shirey. So,
nice to meet you, Corrie.
Give us the headlines of who you would say you are, the important people in your life right now.
The important people in my life right now. I am wife to Jonathan, who's on staff here at Grace. I am mom to Guy, Simeon, Lucy, and Charlotte, who range from 15 down to 4. I am daughter.
I'm sorry, one more time. One more time.
Yeah.
Your mom to how many? One more time.
I have 4 kids.
Okay, from 15.
Yep, almost 16.
Okay.
Almost 14, 11, and 4. Surprise. That last one was an unplanned Arizona gift to our family.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. Okay, sorry, keep going.
That's okay. And I think another big role in my life right now is daughter. My dad, we moved to Arizona about 1.5 years ago because of some health issues that he was having. And goodness, daughter of the Lord, honestly.
Yeah.
I feel like that's who I am first and foremost.
That's great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So there are various, and I would just say, my opinion, I see there's been various seasons in your life that have had highs, lows, challenges, which you even alluded to with your dad right now.
Sure.
And being a daughter to a dad who is by himself and has got major health struggles.
Yeah.
We'll get onto that. But let's just go back a little bit. And I want you to freestyle into any season in your life where you felt, you know what, this season was way longer than I anticipated it to be. And that may be for good reason or for bad reason. But we do know, as we mentioned before, you've lived your life overseas.
Yeah.
So let's just start there. Talk about your overseas life.
How did you get to overseas?
Can I just briefly share my testimony?
Oh, go for it.
Is that all right?
Go for it.
Let me start there. So I didn't grow up going to church, really. I encountered the Lord in my home when I was 17 years old. And I had, I was in a place of real depression. I had a lot of anxiety and fear. And I was on my couch in my parents' home and having what was like a panic attack. And the Holy Spirit said to me, read a Bible. Something said, read a Bible. I now know it was the Holy Spirit. And I said, I laughed to myself. I said, that is so weird. Like, that's the weirdest thought I've ever had. I don't even know where I would find a Bible. My mom was a Christian at the time. So I did have someone of faith in my house, but it just wasn't a part of how our family functioned. We didn't really go to church. And I thought, okay, I'm tired. I'm going to go to bed. And so I turned out all the lights. I turned off MTV at the time. I went upstairs to my room, and in my bedroom, next to my bed, on top of a stack of books, was this Bible I'd been given as a kid. And I remember just looking at it, and I knew the Lord was just like, take it and read it. And so I took the Bible, I went back downstairs, I turned MTV back on because I thought it was really weird what I was getting ready to do. I was like, I've never really sat down to read the Bible before. This is so weird. What am I doing? And I opened it up, and it landed somewhere in Psalms. I can't even tell you which one, but the presence of the Lord, as I just opened the book, read something about the Lord pulling me out of a miry pit. Mm-hmm. And I knew he was real. At that moment, he revealed himself to me. I knew he was real. I knew he was holy. I knew I was sinful. I was so convicted of my sin as I sat there and just even looked back at the TV and what I was consuming then and regularly consuming all the time, just watching stuff like that, living a life that, I was just lost. I was just a lost sheep. And that was really a transformative moment for me. And in the coming weeks, I came to understand like who Jesus was as Lord. Because I would even be like, I don't even understand this. Like, I understand God's real. I understand he's holy, but like, what does Jesus have to do with all of this? And in the next 3 months, Jesus revealed himself to me, who he was as my Savior. And I think for me, and all that we're about to talk about today, that was just a total identity shift.
Right.
I met the Lord, and from that point on, I knew I was his, 100%. There was a sense of my life being given over at that point to whatever he would ask me to do. So I think as we kind of talk about being overseas and, even my role as a daughter right now, my role as a mom, my first and foremost thing was just a calling into relationship with God. And it still is. It's still the most important thing in my life. So as soon as I became a believer, I felt a very strong sense of, I am his. I am the Lord's. What he calls me to, it's going to be walking it out with him. And whatever that meant, that's what I wanted to do. I think I always had a love for other cultures. I grew up right on the border of Mexico, so we were back and forth across the border a lot. I had just a longing in my heart to see more of the world. When I was in college, I had an opportunity to do an internship in Cambodia, working at an orphanage with kids.
So you grew up in El Paso?
Yeah, I grew up in El Paso.
So like you say, you lived, and there was that, because you were on the border, something about being there. Was that a seed about other cultures? I think
El Paso, there's a term called like third culture kid, third culture communities, which is really, you are neither this nor that. You're your own thing. El Paso's a little bit like that, because we have so many people from Mexico living in El Paso, whether now it's probably fourth and fifth generation, but when I was growing up, a lot of them were second and third generation families who had come from Mexico. So it's in the U.S., but it has a lot of people from Mexico, and so it kind of created its own unique city, right? So you kind of have that vibe. That was very much home to me. I was born there. I was raised there. I would go across the border for birthday parties. It was just a normal part of our lives at the time.
That. Yeah.
My dad is a doctor. A lot of his patients came over. El Paso's a unique city. There's a ton of back and forth across the border. Less so now, as times have rolled on, and we're just sort of in a different period of time. But when I was growing up, that was really normal.
So I hate to go on a detour, but I got to go on it real quick. The first detour for me. So you not having a Christian background, one kind of foundational Christian in the home, and you hear this voice, help me or others describe that when they hear that voice, that it's not them own selves. How did you know the difference, not having the background of who Jesus was? And then after that, did you now reshape kind of the difference between your own voice and knowing his voice? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I think as I can describe that situation, when the Lord revealed himself to me, it came with such peace that passed all understanding. There was no human explanation for it, because I was literally sitting in my living room trying to have peace, right? Yeah. Just like, oh, okay, I just need to relax. Okay, I just need to go to bed. Okay, I just need to watch TV. I was like trying to figure it out. Then going upstairs, getting the Bible, coming down, opening the book, and having this revelation that, one, there is a God, two, he is holy, two, he is good. He is good. I knew his goodness. And at that moment, I was flooded with peace that I couldn't possibly put my finger on or what. There was no human explanation for it. Yeah. Other than that, it was a revelation from him. Beautiful. To my heart. I'm here, I'm real. And I would say that often in my life, I've had a lot of junctures in my life. Yeah. I think the Lord often reveals himself with a sense of peace, a knowledge that you are we're not going to get it all right all the time, but there's a grace that he gives.
Yeah.
And I think a peace that he instills inside as we're trying to be obedient to whatever he might put in front of us.
That's awesome.
Right? So
That's
with
great.
discerning
It's good.
his voice.
It's really
anyway,
clear.
That's good. I just that's great. That's
question,
really
good
great. How do
clarity.
you discern that voice?
Yeah.
You know, not knowing who he is, and especially you kind of understanding your background. That's so great. The
Yeah.
peace, the overwhelming peace of who he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So continue. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously,
yeah,
at some point you
overseas,
get
so-
married,
Yeah.
but there's overseas. So
Right?
yeah,
So
share it.
I had, I did this internship in Cambodia. I knew, okay, I definitely don't want to live the rest of my life in Southeast Asia.
Okay.
I liked it. It was an interesting experience, but I didn't feel a sense of home or a desire to really be there forever. After that experience, I went to this. So this is all, I graduated from college in 2002.
What did you graduate in?
I graduated from Wheaton College with
Okay.
a degree in Christian education.
Okay.
So, I knew I had a heart for ministry. I knew I was called. I just had a sense of like, I'm supposed to do ministry. I'm supposed to share the gospel. I am called to, I really had, again, I worked with orphans. I wanted to be a light in places that had no light. I wanted to bring hope where there was no hope. So that was there. And I do think that growing up on the border and very exposed, like from my bedroom window, I could see houses that were made of cardboard. They were literally made of cardboard. So the reality of how most of the world works, and my dad, again, was a physician, and he treated a lot of patients who just came from cultures and communities that just did not have much opportunity or much money to put into their lifestyles. So I always knew that that was a part of what I wanted to do, and a part of just how the Lord's knit me together.
Yeah.
I'm a caretaker naturally. I'm a strengthener. I'm somebody who wants to come alongside people and lend help and lend strength. So that was always there. I went to Cambodia. That was not the best fit. I ended up going to a conference on Islam, and after I graduated from college in 2002. So this is, again, right after 9/11. So there was really a spotlight at the time
course.
on the
Yeah.
what we call the 1040 window,
Yeah.
which is kind of the least reach, the nations of the world that have the fewest number of believers present, and the nations of the world that have the fewest number of people being sent into those countries to share the gospel. So there was definitely culturally in America at the time a spotlight on the Middle East. And I ended up going to a conference on Islam, and the man who presented, he was working in Kurdistan, which is part of Iraq, with the Kurdish people. Kurdish people are, it's like an ethnic group. So it's a group of people. There's a lot of Kurds in Turkey and Iraq and other countries in that region. So he was working with them and just really seeing a hunger for the Lord, a hunger for revelation of who God really is. They had been really wounded by Muslims and by their own Muslim community. And I think a part of them were just going like, wait a second, what is this? What's going on? So there was an open door within his community, and he was just kind of explaining Islam to people in general so that we can understand it. Like, what is it? Because I think at the time, nobody really knew much about Islam as a religion. Yeah, and so he was just explaining what it is, why don't I have to be afraid of it or afraid of talking to people who are Muslims, or, just really engaging as a whole. Like, this is what it is. This is who these people are. And, at the time, I literally just said, I wasn't married to Jonathan at the time. At the time, I just said, Lord, if you want me to go, I'll go. That was it.
So were you already sitting at a place that you were kind of finished with going overseas after in Cambodia?
I don't think so. No,
okay,
I just knew I didn't want to spend my life in Southeast Asia at the time. But I certainly was willing to go overseas again. Like that was definitely on the table.
To a very different culture.
Yeah,
as well.
to
When you
somewhere
say-
else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd sort of gone, okay, maybe not there, but if there's somewhere else, I'll go.
Great.
So I told the Lord, I'll go if you want me to go. And within 2 weeks, I kind of had this invitation thrown open, and it was specifically to ministering to people in the Muslim world. And I sat with it, and I pitched it to the small group I was a part of at the time, just so that I had community trying to discern with me, should I go? And the opportunity was for about 5 to 6 months to go and live in the Middle East and serve in the Middle East. And the more I prayed, the more I just knew, like, that was it. What's complicated, and this is like where you get a whole different kind of podcast, is Jonathan, actually my husband, was doing this same program that was 5 or 6 months. And we had known each other previously, but we're just friends. We're not romantically involved at all. But he had a strong sense of calling to work and to serve in the Middle East. I knew that from the time I knew him. So I knew that's where he was going. I didn't have a sense of like, this is where I'm supposed to go. But I'll say this, by the time I landed, I can remember it was Ramadan, and so there was they have what's called the Night of Power, and people stay up all night praying. And I was on a mountain overlooking an area where all these people were praying. And I told the Lord, it's like, I will stay here for the rest of my life if you want me to be here. I just loved it. I loved the smells. I loved the people. I loved the sounds. I felt alive in that culture.
And so where you landed that night, you were in Kurdistan that night?
No, we were in Jerusalem that night.
You were in Jerusalem that night?
Yeah, we were in Jerusalem that night. So the guy who I heard about Kurdistan from, he was just talking about Islam in general.
Okay, all right.
The path I followed ended up with me in Jerusalem. And then serving in the West Bank after that, which is where so it's Palestine, the Palestinian people are. And again, I loved it at the time. Jonathan and I we never dated. We went straight to engaged when we were on this program. So we skipped.
So you did meet him there? It did?
No, I didn't meet him there. I knew him beforehand. But we skipped dating and we went straight to engaged. Pretty much as soon as we opened a relationship dialogue, it was, are we going to get married? And the answer was just yes. Like, that's it. We're going to get married. And also, I think with that was also knowing he knew he wanted to be in the Middle East. And so I knew also when I got engaged to him, I was like, okay, well, this is it. This is where we're supposed to be. So it was awesome because we started our relationship there. Yeah. And, we knew we would be there long term. We did come back to the States for 2 years, and then we went back over.
So diving into Jerusalem, what for someone that has never been overseas, for someone that has never experienced that culture, you as a Christian going over there, what is that like? How do you describe that feeling and that? What is that like being over there? Why is it for you such a place that you could live forever in that moment? What are the things about that? Just in a little bit more detail. What are the people like? And also, from just kind of people that I've been overseas, I hear such a divide sometimes. And have you ever experienced that divide? Have you ever been in the middle of some of those battles? Yeah.
Well, I'm sure most people who are listening to this are going to know the current situation in the Middle East, which is war between Israel and the Palestinian people. Hamas, well, it's not really, it's against Hamas is really what the war is being fought about. There are some amazing Palestinians who do not align themselves underneath the flag of Hamas. So, people just need to know that in general. So other than this chunk of time, this 5 to 6 months of living in Jerusalem and Palestine, the West Bank, that's the only time I've actually lived there full time.
Okay.
So my experience is limited to that period of time. I've visited other times. We've done tours and I've been all over, but that's the time I lived there. And there's just no place on earth like Jerusalem. It's very tense. You have, you have Israelis and you have Palestinians and you have Palestinian Israelis and you have Christians and they're all together in this city. And there's a lot of tension, as we can see right now, with the leadership for Palestine is Hamas, and so it's just super complicated. That's what I would say about it. Is it's one of the most tense places I've ever been. And we were there though during an intifada, which is an uprising, which is kind of like a period of war, like they're in right now. So that being said, we were there in times when it was just dangerous. But there's a grace, I think, that when the Lord asks you to be obedient to something, it's not like it's all just going to turn out just fine. Yeah. Right?
Correct.
That's just not the way it works, right? The Bible's full of a lot of hardship and suffering and difficulties. But there was certainly then, and we've been in other countries where there's also been a lot of governmental upheaval and terrorism and struggles, but there's a strong sense of like, I'm being obedient and this is where the Lord wants me to be. And so there's a grace to be present in that place and during that time.
Amongst everyone.
Amongst everyone, yeah.
Okay. All right.
So, I mean, there's a lot of division. I think as believers, our goal, our heart has to be for the gospel. That's who we are. It is what we preach. We share of a God who so loved the world, the whole world, every single person, that he gave his son. And so I think in the Middle East, it's easy for people to put themselves in political camps. We feel very strongly about, like, we are there to share the gospel, to share the love of God, to let people know that, like, God forgives them, like he loves them. He wants to extend his mercy to them. He wants to be in relationship with them, where people in the Middle East in general don't know that. No one knows that. The Muslim idea of God is not one who gives himself to his people and loves them so fully and wants them to experience his love and forgiveness completely. I think if you talk about division, I think there's always that opportunity, and I think as believers, we come to it to people humbly.
Right.
We come to them in the name of a God, again, they're created in his image. Those are his people.
Does it feel like you're walking among the streets and there's a lot of unspoken things happening? Like, is it that sort of tense? Is it I'm going to go in the corner and say what I really want? Or is it just,
No, I mean, you definitely learn culture and where you say things and how you do things. And living time you go to another country, I'm sure you even did this here. Yep. Like, there's just all of these unwritten things and written things that you have to figure out. Yep. And the only way to figure that out is to kind of dive in, and you make mistakes. And you figure
what was one that was interesting for you? I think one of the things originally going to the Middle East that stood out the most was like male-female relationships. Okay. Women and men don't really engage much. So women stick with women and men stick with men. And that affected us even when we moved back to the U.S. It was like kind of weird to have conversations with men. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not used to this. So there's definitely much more interaction day to day. Where, the men are more engaging with the men. This is especially in, I would say, the Arab Muslim countries. Okay. That was our experience. The men are with the men and the women are with the women. So, and you learn, you learn as you go. There's a whole lot that you learn. And again, mistakes that you make. And we've had our first stint. So that was like the 5 months. I kind of count that, but not completely. When we moved full time, we went 4 years to the Middle East. And then the next time we went about 6 years. And I would say even between all those times. Oh my God.
So
what ages?
Where were you in that time? And just share anything of, anything.
Okay. So Jonathan and I, this 5-month stint we did in Jerusalem, we got married right after that.
Okay. Yep.
And we spent the next couple of years just trying to figure one another out and trying to figure out what our next step was, and then get the finances to be able to go to the Middle East. So let's see, we had no kids. I was 24 when we moved to the Middle East the first time, full-time.
Full-time, this is the 5-year.
And we studied Arabic full-time for 2 years.
You can speak it now?
Oh, so poorly. Yeah, so poorly. If you put in air, I can, but it's
I know you can.
It's like you.
You're being humble.
I would sound like a kid, which I'm okay with.
Sure.
It comes back.
Okay.
I just need anybody out there who can practice with me. That's what I need. I need practice.
Great.
So we went there for 4 years. We did 2 years of intensive language studies, and then 2 years involved in a local ministry. And and we also had our first kid overseas. And so there's your diversion number one. I did not step into parenthood easily. I was the youngest in my family.
Okay.
I wasn't around babies, and we were the first ones of our friends to have a baby. So it was a huge adjustment because I'm on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
And So here's another culture thing.
So
right?
what country was your first child born in?
He was born in Jordan.
Wow.
Oh my God.
So
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. That's
yeah, and so even
he have dual
down
citizenship?
to
Sorry.
no, you can't. So
Okay,
actually,
you
at the
cannot.
time
I'm sorry.
in Jordan, only if your dad was Jordanian could you become a citizen of Jordan. Even
Wow.
if your mom was and your dad wasn't, you couldn't become a citizen. So it doesn't
Wow,
matter where
okay.
you were born. It doesn't work the same way
All right.
there as it does here.
Sorry to
or
interrupt you.
Anywhere else.
Going
No,
down.
that's okay. So he's
good.
not. That was really bumpy for me. I felt because I was just one. So he wasn't a great sleeper, right? So I'm sleep
Yeah.
deprived. I'm still kind of culture shocking because
Yep.
I'll tell you what, 2-3 years is nothing. It's still hard. Like there's the day to day is hard. We didn't have a car. We had no air conditioner. Like your life is just generally, everything's more tiring. It's more work to do everything we were trying to do. And then I had this baby who didn't want to sleep at night, and I had no friends who understood what that was like. And so I was exhausted.
Yeah.
And it made our next, I would say this is the thing. By the time we left, I got in my groove.
Okay.
I feel like I figured it out right around the time that we were taking off. And for that, it was complicated. The transition from Jordan to where we were going next.
Back to the States?
We ended up coming back to the States because we switched the organization we were working for.
Okay.
And it took time and as you grow, and then we also actually, so our second son, we got pregnant with pretty soon afterwards. They're a little less than 2 years apart.
Okay.
So
He was born in the States.
the second one was born, yes. I was like 5 months pregnant when we came back to the States. He
Okay.
was born here. And then we had another one too before we went back overseas. So by the time we went overseas, the next time we had 3 kids. Our kids were 4, 2, and 3 months when we moved back overseas. So
4, 2, and 3
4,
months.
2, and 3 months.
And
And
let's
are
go-
you
it's
moving
funny.
back to the same spot or a
No,
different
we
spot?
moved to Turkey.
So now you're creating a whole different community,
Yeah.
and you're now diving into the Turkey language?
Yeah,
Sorry.
well, so
Forgive me, folks. I don't know what that's called.
what's crazy about.
Oh, now we're getting somewhere. Wow.
We thought in Jordan. Here's the thing: a lot of people speak English.
They do.
Actually, in the Middle East, a lot of people
Yeah.
speak really
Yeah.
good English.
Yeah.
Seriously.
So when you're in the Middle East, you can really find a lot of good English speakers. I think, and which is great. Now we spent a lot of time studying Arabic, so that was fantastic. And we could be able to speak it. And there were plenty of people who couldn't speak English, but there were enough people who could. We thought Turkey would be the same way. We were like, oh yeah, well, we won't have to focus as much
Yeah.
on language. It's a new language because it's Turkish, right? So it is a new language, but
Turkish. Thank you.
yeah. So, but surely people are going to speak English. So that was a blow because they don't. Turkey does not have, at least the city we were in,
Okay.
very few people spoke English well. So that was a bit of a whammy because we thought going in at the time, there's so many like subsections to the story. We
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
going in at the time that, that we'd just be able to kind of flow. We had an intensive discipleship program that we were going to be up and running. And we thought we won't really need to do much with Turkish, but we did in the end. And it took kind of we had a veteran couple. They had been in Central Asia, and then they were in Turkey, and we were having dinner with them one night. And Jonathan and I were like kind of feeling sorry for ourselves a little bit. We've got
Okay.
3 little kids. We don't have time to study language. Turkish is hard. It's hard. I mean, Arabic's hard too, but Turkish is really hard also. So, and they just kind of said, well, looks like you better strap your boots on and get going. And kind of get over it a little bit. And in the end, it was like, well, I guess they're right. What are we going to do? Because if this
You're
is
here.
where
Yeah.
if this is where we're going to be,
Hang on, this is a teaching moment.
yeah,
You just said you're in this situation. I mean, for some people you think I can't relate, but we can relate when we break it down. You're in this another culture again. There's a whole language barrier. You are a young mum. You're a young family.
Yeah.
Those with young kids know that's got its own stretch. But then another couple comes in alongside you and doesn't necessarily say, well,
comfort
maybe
you.
you should quit. Maybe you should find comfort. Maybe you should retreat. Maybe it's okay. Here we go. They just said,
get going.
Get going.
Yeah.
Like, get going. And I sometimes feel a little bit, maybe it's a generational thing, but I think for some of them, even people who are listening right now, maybe you're struggling with the season you're in right now, get ready for somebody to come alongside you and go, okay, it's time to strap up, as you said, strap your boots on and get going. So what did that look like for you, and how did you feel when they said that?
Yeah.
Well, I'll say this. We respected them so much and their hearts, like their genuine poured out lives for Jesus and their genuine love for Turkey so much that we were like, yeah, you're right. I mean, for them to speak into our lives was a gift, because I think we did need somebody to come along and say, you need to move on. You're going to have to learn it. And it's funny because they helped us like get set up with language tutors and things like that. And at some point I called him, and I said, can you help me do this? And he's like, Corrie, you do it. You do it.
Again, another push.
You do
just
it. Yeah.
no comforting.
You call her.
That's good.
And it's going to be awkward on the phone, and you're not going to understand each other, but you're going to figure something out. You're going to figure something out, and we did. And this couple is gifted, and they've trained a ton of people because they know how to. It's not like they're compassionless and heartless. They were like, all right, you need to.
Yeah.
You need
Are they
to
still
work.
over there?
Oh yeah, they're still there.
Wow.
They are. Who knows how long they could be there forever. They're grandparents now,
Wow.
So so it was really hard. It was also really good and necessary. So we did. It just looked different. It's not like I had these 3 little kids, and Jonathan was really spearheading a program. So it was divided interests, right? We did what we could to get by. What I loved about living overseas, so much of it is that so much of my ministry and life just happened day to day. My parents meeting parents going to the schools my kids are going to,
I was going to ask about that.
And the concept of a neighbor is completely different in the Middle East. So a neighbor is someone you actually get to know. You go and you have tea with them. You sit and you visit, sometimes for hours. So as a culture, they're set up to learn language a little more easily. You don't have to go to class, because and by that time we had some language skills, and I'm pretty good with languages, which is God's gift, right? And I enjoy it. So there's some ways that I'm wired that the Lord was just merciful to me, right? That it wasn't a huge headache to do. Yeah. So sort of organic ways to start to learn a language and to kind of push your way through, and then you just. When we tell people we speak Turkish, it's like we speak Turkish like Tarzan, me, Corrie,
So at what year did Turkey, did you ever get to a point where, I know you said with the last stint, it was when you were leaving that you were in your groove. Did you ever fully get in your groove here?
In Turkey? Oh, for sure.
Okay.
I think, and we had learned so much. We learned so much in Jordan. It was just because even if you're trying to go into it and do it all great, you just fail, and you make an idiot of yourself so many times, and you're so exhausted and you're so disappointed in yourself. Yeah. Right? Because you have this vision of, I'm going and we're going to do this, and none of it happened. None of it unpacked the way we envisioned it at all, even down to leaving. And so, but in the end, it's like, we're just being obedient. We're literally just walking in relationship with the Lord, and we gave him everything that we had there. And did we do a great job? But the Lord wasn't sitting there going, well, you guys, you stink at that. You weren't very good. It was more like, hey, you learned stuff, right? You learn as you go along. So I think stepping into round 2 was it was a whole different ballgame. I gave myself grace I never gave myself the first round. I set my expectations totally different the second time. I think this is what I would say, the biggest lesson I learned the first time is when I went overseas the first time, I was there for a project. I felt like I was there to do something. Yeah. And the second time, I was there for the people. Those people are not a project. I'm not there to fix things with them. Yeah. I'm there to love them. I am there to be there for them. I am there to, and it shifts your outlook when you're going in there going, these are the things I need to do. Right? And these are the things we want to accomplish. And this is what this needs to look like. Versus the second time we went overseas, it was like, these people aren't our project. Like, they're the Lord's people. They are created in his image. They are designed to know him.
Yeah.
They're his. They're his people.
So
how do we take that to them and love them through that and reveal the Lord to them in such a way so that they see that, right?
Yeah, just on the in the middle kind of section that I'm hearing you say, I'd love to just for you to talk about a little bit when the Lord calls you somewhere and you are, and you know, the Lord gives you an assignment somewhere and you go and nothing goes as planned as you thought it was going to go. And you're already just completely out of your comfort zone. And nothing, just like you said, you went there and you accomplished the things that you thought you were going to accomplish. You did not. How do you stay in the right mindset to continue down the path of what you know you're called to? Let's say if I'm on a rocky road with Jesus right now and I don't, you know what I mean? I'm already in a place where I'm just kind of, do I believe or don't I believe? What things did you do? What tangible things can you say that walks you to this place where you are continuing to follow his? And I know that there's a faith element, right, with that.
Right.
But on the other side of it, what tangible things can you say, I saw good in this, or I saw in this, and I know that this didn't work out, that made it when you came back, hey, that was a great trip, no matter what it looked like. Does that make sense, what I'm asking? It
does. Okay. Yeah, but how to unpack it, I'm not exactly sure. I think, again, it goes back to what we were just saying about people being a people and not a project. But for me, first and foremost, rather than a role I'm playing, who am I in my identity? Oh, I'm the Lord's daughter. That's who I am. In my life here, whatever the results, my life is to have my heart in such a place with him that whatever comes, there's grace for it from him because I know that I can trust him. And I think I would have to say this. If you're going to have that, you have to realize this earth is not your home. This earth is not our home.
Right.
So that's my worldview.
Yeah.
Right. I'm coming to this from a different worldview than maybe somebody who's struggling with their general faith. Right. My worldview is there's an eternity to be lived. And frankly, this world is full of a lot of suffering and hardship. It's a lot of hard stuff. I've walked through a lot of hard stuff in my life. Things aren't even really hunky-dory right now in all faculties of, all parts of my life. But, this is not my home. And I feel like it's just God's mercy that I love him as much as I do. And if there's anything I've done, it has been to seek to have a soft heart toward the Lord and toward other people. I think what can happen is as hardships come, we just get like scabby hearts, and we get dulled, or we get tired, or we get stressed, or we get kind of like, okay, well, I'm just done with that. But coming back to a place where you can say, like, Lord, this isn't my home. Would you so make yourself known to me that I can walk this out faithfully, even if it's tough?
That's good.
And he does do it. Yeah. But it just, I would say too, a practical thing when it comes to having that heart is that, because I found myself in plenty of burned out seasons where I'm just like, I'm teary, I'm tired, I don't want to open the word, I don't really want to pray. I'm just altogether worn out. A lot of times the Lord has led me to an extended time of fasting. And in fasting, what I have found is that he renews. I can think of two very significant times in my life when I was as dry as could be. And I felt God prompt me to do like a 3-month fast. And in that time, he totally renewed my love for him, my love for his word, my love for intercession. Because I do think life's just kind of hard sometimes, and you're like, it can kind of beat you down, you just get a little worn out. And the reality is, I think keeping that eternal perspective and intentionally pressing in and going, wait, because he will meet people.
Can I add in a bit of a life lesson for people here? You left the shore, you go overseas, life gets hard, things are hard, it doesn't work out in the middle away you go. There's a one-liner, it's a cliche, but I think it's not said enough, is that in the hard times of life, make sure your heart doesn't get hard. There's a difference between resiliency and having a hard heart.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing from your story, you got
and
tough.
Getting hard,
But
I love your
but
heart.
you have to do it with a soft heart.
That's exactly it. So that's that. And I think for some of us, don't forget that life's about people.
Yeah.
Don't forget life's about people.
Yeah.
And to focus on people, hopefully, will keep your heart soft.
Okay, so I'm going to double up.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
So you spent that stint, this next stint of, what was that?
Almost 6 years.
Almost 6
Just
years.
shy of
You moved
6
back to the States, right? Okay, so here's my question. You're a mom. You've got children. You, growing up, have seen the hardships. Everything hasn't been what I would call first world, where kids here kind of see just what they see and they get what they want. How has that affected your teaching, you and Jonathan's teaching of your kids? They've seen different environments. They've seen poor environments. How is that? Have you experienced any, like, Mom, I want this, or I want this, and kind of bringing back to your childhood and seeing the things that you saw out of your window? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
How has that affected your parenting now in the States, where you kind of see, I want this and I get this and I want it now and blah, blah, blah?
Well, we've got 4 kids and I'm not working right now, so there's a lot of stuff they can't have, right? So, my kids had the gift of also ministering alongside us in Turkey. And so one of the main things we did was we served Syrian. Okay, well, we didn't even get to this part, but we served a Syrian civil war community, refugees. They had fled Syria, where they all speak Arabic. So the Lord had led us into this country, Turkey, where we didn't know anything, but then he brought millions of people into Turkey who were fleeing civil war from Syria into Turkey, where we got to plant ourselves and be with people and speak Arabic. So we got to use that again. And we brought our kids with us all the time into people's homes. And we say now we received the gift of hospitality. These people had nothing, but they would serve us dinner and tea and would pull together as a community to just show us hospitality. And we listened to them, we loved them, we advocated for them as much as we could within Turkey. So my kids had, similar to the way I grew up, looking at a world that just didn't look, I guess, like the rest of Western America looks. Yeah. So again, and then I lived out of the country. So even me living in Arizona, it's one of my first times I've ever been just an American housewife raising kids in the States. And so that's a whole different, it's just totally different. So my kids, I feel have been blessed knowing that. There is a different world shift for them. It was a huge transition for them to come to the States.
Yeah.
But you can forget. Kids forget real easily, right? So I think there is definitely a battle within our culture of we need more stuff. We've got to do more things. We've got to, right now for us, it's what club sports is everybody playing? What big vacations is everybody going on? How do you, I think for me, I'm still transitioning. I don't like how busy I am in the States. There's parts of life in the Middle East that were much more community oriented. Life took a slower pace. There weren't 5 sports kids played in a year. There weren't. It was just.
That's what I wanted to get to.
It was just so different, and I don't prefer this to that. But this is where God's called us.
We're not hating on it, people.
No, but this is where God's called us to now, and I think I'm kind of no nonsense. So when it comes to my kids and even things that they want, it's we have to deal with reality. So, right? So it's you love it, but it's you can't have it. And I don't feel sorry for them. I mean, every once in a while I do. but in general, it's kind of this is a life lesson. And who knows how long America will have this land of prosperity where everybody has things. You know what I mean? This may not, even as the nation as it is right now, it may not continue on forever where it's just such
history
an
would say not. So
of things and availability and convenience and who knows. So I look at their lives and go, it's a gift to them even if they do or they don't know it now. That one, they can't have everything they want right now, and 2, they've seen communities where I mean, if I thought I suffered in Turkey sometimes, which I did occasionally, and I had hardships. I lost my mom when we were in Turkey. So to a lot of suffering. She suffered terribly. So she was in the States, I was in Turkey, and I'd fly back and forth. And but there is perspective. Again, this isn't our home. She was a believer. This was not her home. And we also were serving in communities that, I mean, they'd lost everything, not only because the elderly in Syria could not flee Syria, right? So your elderly population stayed in the civil war. They lost a generation of people.
Wow.
So the people we were living among and serving among, they'd all left their parents back in a country where they didn't know if they could get food or water. Or I had a friend lost her mom because she couldn't get her medicine that she needed. There's perspective that comes with that.
Yeah.
And so, and that's a good perspective. That's good. Yeah. I mean, it may not feel good to them, to everybody right now, like my kids. I'm sure they'd love that trip to Hawaii that their friends are going on, or their club sports that they can't do. But that's okay.
Yeah.
And I hope that they grow up to want to make, if more than anything, want to make a difference in whatever communities that they're a part of. And
I just love you. Yeah, I just love your view, and I love, I just think it's super interesting just how your kids grew up, the things that you guys got to saw and see and be a part of. That's just amazing to me. My last question, I guess, is just for anyone that has that pull on their heart right now of going overseas or living over there, or what advice can you give to them? I know that you sought out community, which is always my first number one advice. But what other things in your prayer life that you kind of saw that made it evident for you? What things can you give a person thinking about that?
I would say that if there's an open door somewhere, take it. Right? I mean, I think it's real easy to kind of sit back and go, I'd love to do that sometime. I'd love to do it when this. I'd love to do it when that. But I think sometimes it's just, obviously, yes, within the discernment of community, but making a jump or making a change, there's always some inertia that happens. And so it's very easy. I've talked to some people who've spent their whole lives kind of wishing they'd done it. And I would just say, take a risk. The Lord provides. He always provides. So if it's a financial issue, he always provides.
Yeah.
And I would seek out communities that are also have a heart for a heart for the world as a whole, and not just for kind of what's going on right here and right now. And they can always talk to us too. We can share.
I am going to dive into a specific though that I know about Corrie and Jonathan's life.
I just wanted to finish the overview.
That I think is super valuable. So we've got the whole overseas story, all of those in the middle. So here's another. You move back to the States. You get a surprise gift in Charlotte. Now, that story is a story. And even the timing of it in 2020.
Right.
And all that came.
March 2020.
Talk to us about your pregnancy, the birth of Charlotte, and those that first year.
I think the big word is shock. We thought we were done with 3 kids, and we just moved our kids to the U.S., and that was a tough transition for our kids. Our hope for our children overseas had been that they would love where they lived. They'd love the people. They'd love the land. They'd love the culture. And the gift is that they did. They loved it. But plucking them out and dropping them, in Tempe, Arizona, was a shock. It was a shock for them. So we knew, and we were by then not American. I didn't know anything about American kid culture or anything. So, and this was with a 4th and 5th grader who, you're supposed to have some things figured out by then. So it was a huge transition for the oldest 2 especially. And then we found out we were pregnant with Charlotte. Jonathan and I, we just didn't talk about it for a couple months because we didn't know what to say. And I was, almost 40. So, and it was a really tough pregnancy. I think tough because there was so much stress. Right. Because the transition was so huge, walking with our kids through everything they were going through. a part of it. My dad has kind of a history of some mental health issues, trying to support him being back in the States. He's lost my mom. So there's just a lot of various dynamics that made it super tough. And then, I ended up going into preterm labor. She was born 2 months early. At right the week everything shut down in the States for COVID. She weighed 2 pounds, 10 ounces. So it was another hardship. I will confess, I had some woe is me moments where I was like, Lord, I don't know what.
I think that's perfectly valid.
So totally
I don't know what you're
You've got
thinking.
all of that stress going on with the 3 kids.
I think it's totally fine.
A 2 pound, 10 ounce little girl.
At that point, if the turkey people had told you just get over it, I'm a little bit upset. At that point, I'm a little bit upset.
Right in COVID.
I'm a little bit upset.
So give us those early months of Charlotte's life.
The early months were
life.
2 months of the NICU, right? So everything shut down in the States. Everybody in America's homeschooling their kids, which I don't think we did school. I think we just were like trying to survive everything. I think we dropped it. In the end, COVID was a gift for us because there wasn't the schedule to keep for work for Jonathan. I had him around a lot.
Yeah.
It also, I think, when we moved to the States, we kind of did try that sport, see if you like it. Try this, see if you like it. Do this, see if you like it. Having a 2-month preemie baby and having a global pandemic, it kind of just put a stop sign in front of us, and we stopped, and we just slowed down. So for us, it was pretty awesome because it gave us a chance to get our feet underneath us and stop the extra activities, and we're not driving around to sports. And so that was great. She's awesome. She is awesome, but she was a fussy baby. She's by far my fussiest, most difficult baby I had of the 4. So what do you do other than you do what you have to do? I pray all the time, every day, and even throughout the day, Lord, give me my daily bread. And that isn't just like the sustenance we need. Like, Lord, give me the grace today for the things that I have to do today. Like, that's one of my life prayers. That's how I just approach it, because there's too much to go.
Today.
It's big good. Picture. I have to have it all figured out.
Give me my daily bread.
Give me my daily bread.
And the meaning behind that one more time? Sorry.
Well, sometimes it's like we need what we need to sustain us, right, physically, and we need the Lord's provision. But, like, Lord, give me what I need emotionally and spiritually to walk into this day with my kids, with my husband, with the community that you've placed us in.
That's so good.
Give me my daily bread. So
sorry.
That's a lot of
I'm gonna steal that from you.
That's a lot of how, like, I'm still, honestly, where she's 4 now.
Yeah.
I'm still functioning in that because I think, and it's so funny, when we moved to the States, this was the thing. I was like, I'm going to go back and get my master's degree. I'm going to get my job. Lucy, my youngest is in 1st grade. It was all kind of, this is what I'm going to do, Lord. Now it's it. And having a 4th in our particular situation just was like, no, that's all done. But it was so the mercy of God, because our kids really needed a lot of support in those first couple years. Yeah. They had to figure themselves out in a totally different way. And I think if I had been mentally divided between, like, well, this is my career right now, I'm doing these classes. Yeah. Charlotte's been a gift in that it slowed everybody down. A baby for a middle schooler is the best thing ever, because there's so much drama, but you come home and you're playing with Legos with a little kid, and it simplifies life. So, so I think it's all in perspective, right? But in the meantime, my daily bread.
Are you suggesting that if you've got a middle schooler, the best gift you can give them is have another baby?
Yeah, so if there's anybody out there wondering if they should have that other one.
We'll agree to disagree, Corey. In the name of Jesus, we'll agree to disagree.
That's so funny.
No, it's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah, it was such a gift. She's such a gift. So, and now she's just going to take care of us when we get old. She made us old at once and is keeping us young all at once.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I think that's basically it. The daily bread. Nice. And I think that's just how we kind of go about our lives right now. Nothing major has shifted in the last 4 years. It's just kind of.
So a little bit about just a little bit about your dad now. Your dad is living here with you.
He lives in Arizona.
What is kind of, where is that at, if you don't mind?
He has I mean, everybody, both of my parents, if you talk to the medical community, are like, we've never seen anyone like this. You know?
Yeah.
So they both have had really tough journeys, health journeys. He has probably, we think, something like Lewy body dementia.
Okay.
He went from practicing medicine and living on his own to within months just in an assisted living facility and really not having much recollection of almost anything. So, and we saw some signs before he kind of crashed, but the crash came hard and fast. And I've honestly, he's been here a year and a half, and it's been a year and a half of me navigating that whole system for him and advocating for him, finding him good care. I just moved him last month because of some challenges we were having and where he was previously. And yeah, I'm really honestly, the more it's always perspective, right? You talk to more people. I had a wonderful father, and that simplifies some things. People who don't have good relationships with their parents when their parents are in this phase of life where they are dependent on other people, it can be really complicated. I don't have that complication. I have a really good dad.
Yeah.
I moved into this phase of my life, right, of losing my mom and caring for my dad much sooner than I anticipated. But it's give me my daily bread, right? That's what we're doing. We're kind of navigating it a little bit at a time. And I feel confident that for now, he's in a good spot and we're available to him. He's in Tempe now, which is, so location-wise, it's just one step at a time.
So little bit. In all of what you're doing now, I know I said that was my last question a while ago, but it's not. In all of that you're doing right now, this is coming towards the end. I just love the idea of other cultures and the slowness of it and the family and the community aspect of it. I long for that here a little bit, and not the fastness and the, I need to get to, right? And I'm guilty of that probably more than anybody. How do you slow it down now? How do you bring what you've learned from Turkey, from Jordan, and slow it down in your home? And honestly, I'm asking for me. Teach me. How do I slow it down?
You have to say no to things, because there's always a whole lot of stuff that could happen or could be good or you could do this. And there's always an opportunity to be busy. It's nonstop. There's always something happening that you can be like, oh yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
So I think, and I would say this is something we've done the best that we can do in keeping it as simple as we can, while also trying to give our kids opportunities to do some things. But we say no a lot, and we try to keep a pace where we have plenty of family time. We have time to sit around and just, do things that can be spontaneous sometimes, creating that space. So, but one of the things I think I realized is that when I was here, it felt like there's this kind of whip behind you going get going, get going, get going. You have to get this, do this, do more. Yeah. And I will say, actually, having my dad here, because that for me, by the time I had 4 kids plus my dad, I was like, oh, I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. I'm maxed out.
Yeah.
And it forced me. I silenced the whip. I took the whip and I threw it away. And I try to create space in our lives where there's grace for a pace for me to, read books and spend time with my kids, go to the park. But it's a discipline, I think, of going, you know what, we're going to say no. Yeah. We don't do club sports, right? So, which I say that because it's such a prevalent thing with the ages my kids are in right now. Right.
Sure.
People are just, by the time they get done with their school, then they're at however many hours of whatever, and then they're on trips, and then they're on. And so I think for us, it's well, no, we're just going to say no.
I think there's 2 things here that are very clarifying for me as you're talking. Somebody once said to me, a good friend of mine said, a weakness is your strength overplayed. So you think about the United States, the land of opportunity. that's a strength. But you overplay it.
Yeah.
But there's an opportunity, and there's more.
Yeah.
There's more, and it ends up being a weakness.
Yeah.
The very
Yeah.
thing that's a strength. And then the other thing that you're saying without saying it, it was John Wesley, I think, who quoted this, and he said, really, for us, why don't we live more simply so that the others in our life can simply live? Why don't we live more simply so that others in our life can simply live? And so there's something beautiful about your saying, hey, no, say no. And maybe life isn't still simple, but
Yeah.
that saying no is enabling others to really live rather than just go.
Yeah.
And I think for people listening,
Yeah.
you may be in that season of the
Yeah.
pressure of I've just got to do more. But we're called to be more, not do more. So that's, I mean,
That's
it's
really good.
It's powerful.
It's
Really,
really,
powerful.
really, really good.
Even it's funny. We have a dog. We got a dog too. At the
Oh,
same time we
throw a
got
dog in.
everything else. We just decided to get a dog because we always lived in apartments. So
What
we
kind of
always were
dog
like,
you have?
it's a mutt.
It's a
It's
mutt.
a mutt.
Okay.
But it's so funny. In this last season, as I've had to slow down, he's a fast walker, but every once in a while he just like stops. Just stops everything and kind of like looks up at me like we're going too fast.
Yeah.
And I kind of took it
Wow.
as a sign. This is like a little bit of like, Corrie, just slow down.
Beautiful.
Just slow down. It's okay. I got to get my walk in so that I can go do this, so that I can go do this, so that I can go do this. It's kind of like, no, actually just slow down. Just slow down a little bit. And I think if you have that personality, which I do, which is a little bit of like, I'm good at getting things done. So I like to knock things out and get
Yeah.
stuff done. But if that's your personality, you have to conscientiously go, no, I'm not going to jump on that list of things. I got to conquer all at once. And
Yeah.
yeah.
It's good. This is this has been really great, Corrie. It's been nice to have you here.
Thanks for
Your
having
story
me.
is fantastic.
Yep.
Overseas, I definitely want to say if you have that pull on your heart to go overseas, to be over there. Jonathan's email, I think, is on Grace's
able to
website.
just reach out to us. We
Just
can put
reach
you in
out,
touch with
and,
Jonathan.
that would be great. We do this last little thing on our podcast where we ask a little fun question at the
okay.
end. And it is your top 3 movies. In no particular order. I'll give you one of Dez's, which is The Gladiator.
Just
Yeah,
glad
I knew that.
I don't know why. Anyways,
yeah.
one of mine is Purple Rain. I do enjoy that
Okay,
movie.
yeah.
Do you know that movie?
I
Okay,
do.
great.
All right.
So just give us top 3 movies.
Top 3
It doesn't
movies.
have to be in any particular order. Let's just see. Number
they're
3.
gonna be really different. But they're not gonna be in 1, 2, 3. But
Okay, yeah.
So I love Black Hawk Down is one of my
Oh,
favorite movies.
wow. Yes.
Actually have seen that one.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
an old one.
number 2.
The long BBC Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, yeah.
It's like 6
Yeah.
hours long.
Yeah,
But
okay.
it's great.
Okay.
Even my kids love it. If you can suffer, it's kind of suffering for the first
Sure.
half, but the last half's really good.
Okay, number 1.
Oh.
In no particular
I'm
order.
like just going anything that's not a cartoon right now because we have so many. Charlotte. I'm literally like, I think the only movies I watch are Disney princesses right now. I like Moana.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
Hey,
It's a good
can't
movie.
sleep on
It's a-
Moana.
it's a good
That's a
movie.
really great movie.
So
a good movie.
I'll
yeah,
take that.
if
I'll
I'm
take
looking
Moana.
at the movies I'm watching, it's way up there.
I like your
Great.
3. Your 3 is very,
I like
very,
that.
very
I
different.
like it.
Yeah,
Very
thanks.
different.
That's awesome. Thanks
right.
so much, Corrie. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next week for the last episode of this season,
Yeah.
Life in the Middle. Thank you again, Corrie.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you.
We'll see you next week.
See you guys.
See you.
Bye.
Goodbye.